The Duxbury mother accused of killing her 3 children appeared in court today for the last hearing before her trial. A judge outlined some of the rules for Lindsay Clancy's case, and as WBC's Christina Rex reports, lawyers clashed over who will be allowed inside the courtroom.
Paralyzed from a suicide attempt the same night she allegedly killed her 3 children, Lindsay Clancy is wheeled into a Plymouth courtroom before one of the final hearings ahead of her murder trial.
She takes responsibility. She as the kids say, she owns it. She's not running away from anything here. This whole case is an extreme tragedy.
Clancy's defense is that postpartum mental health issues influenced her behavior the night she allegedly killed all 3 of her kids inside a Duxbury home while her husband picked up takeout. On Thursday, we learned that Patrick Clancy, the children's father, will take the stand. That jurors will hear the harrowing 911 call when he discovered his children's bodies, and that they'll see autopsy photos.
At 5:15 in the evening, on January the 24th, 2023, Patrick Clancy kissed his wife goodbye, grabbed his car keys, and drove to a CVS pharmacy and a restaurant to pick up dinner for his family. He was gone for less than 1 hour. When he came back, his daughter Cora, 5 years old, was dead. His son Dawson, 3 years old, was dead. His baby boy Callan, just 8 months old, was dying. And his wife, the mother of his children, the woman he called the love of his life, was lying broken on the frozen ground outside their home. In the months that followed, Patrick Clancy stood before the world and said 6 words that broke everyone who heard them. He said, "I wasn't married to a monster. Welcome to Midnight Case Files. Tonight, we go inside the house on Summer Street, inside the marriage, inside the medicine cabinet, and inside one of the most heartbreaking and complicated true crime cases this country has ever seen. This is the story of Lindsay Clancy. And there are no easy answers here. Stay with me." Lindsay Marie Musgrove was born on August the 11th, 1990. She grew up in Wallingford, Connecticut. And from the very beginning, this was a woman who pushed herself. A woman who set the bar high and cleared it every single time. She attended one of the most rigorous accelerated nursing programs in the entire country at Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston. And she didn't just graduate. She excelled. She became a labor and delivery nurse at Mass General, and she stayed there for 9 years. 9 years of bringing babies into the world. 9 years of holding mothers' hands through their most vulnerable moments. 9 years of being the calm in the room when everything was chaos. In December of 2016, she married Patrick Clancy. And by every account from everyone who knew them, they were that couple. The couple you look at and think, yes, that is what love is supposed to look like. Patrick's own mother, Susan Clancy, told a grand jury she was a fun-loving, doting wife and mother. She loved her kids. And she was a nurturing mother who smiled all the time. A mother who smiled all the time. Their first child, Cora, was born in December 2017. Then Dawson in September 2019. And then their youngest, baby Callan, in May 2022. 3 children. A loving marriage. A beautiful home on Summer Street in Duxbury, Massachusetts, a quiet coastal town south of Boston where the houses have green lawns and the neighbors wave hello. From the outside, this family was perfect. But something was happening on the inside. Something dark. Something that Lindsay had been desperately trying to fight. After the birth of Cora, Lindsay began experiencing postpartum anxiety. It was manageable. She got help. She pushed through. After Dawson, it happened again. A little worse this time. But still, she managed. She was a nurse. She understood mental health. She knew how to ask for help. But after Callan, something was different. Something shifted in a way that Lindsay and everyone around her could not fully understand. She began taking medications. Not 1 or 2. Not even 5 or 6. At the peak of her treatment, Lindsay Clancy had been prescribed 13 different psychiatric medications. 13. Her attorney, Kevin Reddington, would later tell the court she was prescribed Zoloft, Prozac, Valium, Ativan, Klonopin, Trazodone, Seroquel, and more. A cocktail so complex, so layered, that Reddington called it horrific. He called it a life of horrific misery because of medications. Patrick himself went to her doctors the week before January 24th. The week before. He sat in front of them and said, "I am begging you to help my wife." He told them, "You're turning her into a zombie." The doctors did not change her treatment plan. Lindsay also kept journals. Detailed journals about her prescriptions, about her feelings, about her children. And in those journals were entries that prosecutors would later seize upon as evidence of deliberate planning, references to self-harm, and disturbingly, expressions of wanting to harm her children. She also, and this is what prosecutors have hammered on, used her phone to research ways to kill. She used maps to calculate how long it would take to drive to a restaurant and back. In the first days of January 2023, Lindsay admitted herself to McLean Hospital, one of the most prestigious psychiatric facilities in the country, for 5 days. January 1st to January 5th. She was released. She went home. She took her medications. And on January the 24th, Patrick went to get dinner. If you are watching Midnight Case Files for the first time tonight, this is what we do here. We sit in the hard cases. We don't look away. We don't oversimplify. We ask the questions that matter. Hit subscribe. Hit the bell. And stay with me because this story is about to get even more complicated. 5:15 p.m. Patrick leaves. What happened in the next 55 minutes? Prosecutors say happened like this. Lindsay Clancy went into the basement of their home on Summer Street. She took exercise bands, the kind you use for home workouts, the kind sitting in any ordinary household. And one by one, she brought her children down. Cora, 5 years old. Dawson, 3 years old. Callan, 8 months old. She strangled each of them with those exercise bands. Then, she called Patrick's phone. While he was on his way home, she spoke to him, said nothing was wrong. Then she went upstairs. She took a knife and cut her wrists and her neck. And then, she opened a second-story window. And she jumped. Patrick arrived home to find his wife lying on the frozen ground. He ran to her. She was barely conscious, suffering from severe spinal injuries. "What did you do?" he asked. She told him she had tried to kill herself, and that the children were in the basement. Patrick ran inside. He found Cora and Callan in the main area. He found Dawson in the home office, a separate room. All 3 children still had the exercise bands wrapped around their necks. Patrick removed the bands from each of them. He begged them to breathe. He screamed. According to a transcript of the 911 call read aloud in court, she killed the kids. Cora and Dawson were pronounced dead that same night. Baby Callan was rushed to Boston Children's Hospital. He was placed on life support. He died 3 days later. On January the 27th, Patrick Clancy lost all 3 of his children in 72 hours, and his wife was now paralyzed from the waist down, in a hospital bed, under 24-hour suicide watch. I need you to hit that like button right now. This case deserves to be seen. This family deserves to be remembered. Hit like and keep watching. On February the 7th, 2023, lying in her hospital bed at Brigham and Women's Hospital, Lindsay Clancy was arraigned via Zoom. She was charged with 3 counts of murder, 3 counts of strangulation, 3 counts of assault and battery with a dangerous weapon. She pleaded, not guilty. And here is where this case becomes unlike almost anything you have seen before. Because the prosecution says this. Lindsay Clancy knew exactly what she was doing. She planned it. She deliberately sent her husband out of the house so she would have time alone with the children. She researched methods of killing. She documented her plans in a journal. She called her husband after killing the children to establish a normal conversation and said nothing. This was not a woman in a psychotic break. This was a woman who planned, executed, and then tried to escape the consequences by taking her own life. And the defense says this. Lindsay Clancy was not herself on January the 24th. She had not been herself for months. She was living in the grip of postpartum psychosis, one of the most severe and poorly understood mental health conditions known to medicine. She was being prescribed up to 13 different medications simultaneously, a combination so destabilizing that her own husband was begging her doctors for help the week before the tragedy. Her attorney Kevin Reddington has been consistent from day one. This family was on the road to hell and unfortunately is not coming back. Here is the critical question at the heart of this case. Can a woman plan something and still not be criminally responsible for it? Because postpartum psychosis does not always look like a woman who has lost all grip on reality and cannot form sentences. Sometimes, it looks like a woman who is going through the motions, who is functioning on the outside, while something catastrophic is happening on the inside. Her defense team has argued she was hearing auditory hallucinations, that her journals, the same journals prosecutors say show deliberate planning, were actually the desperate writings of a woman trying to document her deteriorating mind. That the medications she was given made everything worse. That her doctors failed her. That the system failed her. And then there is the medical malpractice dimension. In January 2026, Patrick Clancy filed a lawsuit against his wife's psychiatric providers for at least $1 million, alleging they overprescribed medications and failed to monitor her deteriorating condition. Lindsay herself filed her own separate lawsuit against her doctors. Both lawsuits make the same core claim. The people whose job it was to keep this family safe did the opposite. If this case is making you think, if it is making you feel something complicated, that is the point. Subscribe to Midnight Case Files. Share this video. This is the conversation America needs to be having about postpartum mental illness, and we're going to keep having it. I have to stop here, because there is one figure in this story who defies almost every expectation. Patrick Clancy, the man who lost everything. Within days of his children's deaths, Patrick Clancy started a GoFundMe, and in that fundraiser, he wrote words that stopped the entire internet. He wrote, "The real Lindsay was generously loving and caring. All I wish for her now is that she can somehow find peace." He called for the public to forgive her. He moved to Manhattan after her indictment. And in October 2024, he sat down with The New Yorker, one of the most respected publications in the world, and he said, "I wasn't married to a monster. I was married to someone who got sick." Think about what it takes to say that. Think about the grief that man carries. The funerals he planned. The bedrooms he had to walk past. The sound of 3 children's voices he will hear in his head forever. And instead of rage, he chose that. Now, that does not mean he agrees with everything Lindsay's defense has done. It does not mean he has absolved her of all responsibility. But it means he looked at the woman he loved and refused to stop seeing her as a person. That is extraordinary, and it has shaped this case in ways prosecutors never fully anticipated. Lindsay Clancy's murder trial is set to begin on July the 20th, 2026, in Plymouth County Superior Court in Massachusetts. She is now 35 years old. She attends hearings in a wheelchair, paralyzed from the waist down from the injuries she sustained the night of January 24th. She has appeared in court via Zoom from Duxbury State Hospital, where she has been held since her arrest under round-the-clock supervision because her attorney has warned there is a, quote, real probability she will try to kill herself during the trial. Her lawyer Kevin Reddington has already fired his opening shot at the forensic evidence, calling the prosecution's psychiatric analysis, quote, voodoo forensics. He has argued that the state's expert witnesses are drawing conclusions that no credible scientist can support. The defense is pursuing a not guilty by reason of insanity plea. They're arguing Lindsay had no criminal responsibility for her actions because of postpartum psychosis and the catastrophic effects of her over-medication. In a stunning legal move, Lindsay's defense team offered to have her formally admit in writing that she killed her children in exchange for a trial structure that would focus entirely on her mental state. Prosecutors pushed back hard, and the judge denied the request to split the trial into separate phases. The jury in this case will face one of the most difficult questions a jury has ever been asked. Was this murder? Or was this a medical catastrophe that happened to look like a crime? There is expected to be a jury home tour, meaning jurors may actually visit the house on Summer Street. The trial is expected to last weeks. Here is why this case matters beyond the courtroom. Postpartum psychosis affects 1 to 2 women out of every 1,000 who give birth. It is rare. It is devastating. And it is massively underdiscussed. It is not the same as postpartum depression, which is far more common and far more widely understood. Postpartum psychosis can include hallucinations, delusions, a complete break from reality. And in rare, tragic cases, it has led mothers to harm their children and themselves. But here is what the medical community has been saying for decades and what policymakers have been ignoring. It is treatable. With the right diagnosis, the right medication, the right support structure. Women who receive appropriate care for postpartum psychosis do not, as a general rule, harm their children. The system has to catch them first. Lindsay Clancy had a psychiatrist. She had a treatment plan. She was taking her medications. And her husband sat in front of her doctors the week before his children died and told them something was wrong. Whatever happened on January 24th, whether it was murder or psychosis or something in between, the question of how we got there is one this country has to answer. Because there are mothers right now, suffering in silence, too afraid or too unwell to ask for help. There are families right now, watching a loved one deteriorate, not knowing where to turn. The Lindsay Clancy case should never have happened. And whether she is found guilty or not guilty, the children of Duxbury, Cora, Dawson, and Callan deserved better from the system that was supposed to protect their mother. Before you click away tonight, I want you to think about 3 children. Cora, 5 years old, who loved her mom and smiled in every picture. Dawson, 3 years old, a little boy who had barely begun. And Callan, 8 months old, who never even had the chance to walk. They're gone. And nothing that happens in a Plymouth County courtroom in July will bring them back. But what might come out of this trial is a national conversation about postpartum mental illness that is long overdue. About how we treat mothers. About what we do or don't do when a family is clearly struggling. About a medical system that prescribed a woman 13 psychiatric medications and called it care. That conversation is what Cora, Dawson, and Callan deserve. Drop in the comments, where do you stand on this case? Monster or victim? Guilty or not guilty by reason of insanity? Is the system to blame? Is Lindsay to blame? Is everyone to blame? I want every single one of your thoughts. Like this video. Share it. Subscribe to Midnight Case Files if you haven't already. And if you or someone you know is struggling with postpartum depression or any mental health crisis, call or text 988. Free. Confidential. 24 hours a day. This is Midnight Case Files. Stay curious. Stay compassionate. And never stop asking why. Subscribe, like, share, comment. Guilty or not guilty? Trial begins July 20th, 2026. We will cover it live.